Okay, just going over the process of getting a site plan and height data from Edina into SketchUp, and that's kind of via AutoCAD because it's much better to modify the various sort of files because they're very large in AutoCAD as opposed to SketchUp. It'll just be too messy. Okay, so fire up Edina, so digimap.edina.ac.uk and Coventry University, and then put in your username and password. You need to have set up an account prior to this, so make sure you do that. On the right hand side, so we go just step one back on this. So Ordnance Survey, and the Roam bit is where you just print off a map and find out some bits of information. The data download is the CAD and JS data. Click on that, and then we've got the coastline view, so showing coastline up there. As I zoom in, you get mini scale, and it gets slightly bigger. You have to allow for my bandwidth on this. It's still on mini scale. We'll zoom into Coventry, and then we get the 1 to 50,000 raster when it finally pings into shape. So we always get an idea of what sort of level of detail you're getting when you kind of see this little label up here. So I'm going to zoom a little bit more into this just so I can get into the Open Map Local, and looking for the site that I'm going to choose. Your site is in Ravens Hill or whatever it is called, but the process is exactly the same. So you find your site, but I've got maps for this area, so I'm not going to download any more maps for the purpose of this. And then you need to search, or sorry, you've searched, you need to draw a rectangle or use coordinates or tile, but I'll just draw a rectangle. I'm just basically looking for this area, so my site's in the middle of that. It's kind of irrelevant because the sites that we get in are so much bigger than this. It picks the nearest box or series of boxes. This might sit over 3 boxes, and we might be looking at the data in the middle of, say, 1 there, 2 there, 3 there, and 4 there, perhaps. Okay, so it's, you know, luck of the draw. I suppose you could use the tile name, and then that will show you what information you're looking at. But then I don't know what the tile name is, so I'm not going to use that. Whoops a daisy. So let's hit escape on that, and let's try and close this down now. There you go. So after you've selected the area, then you choose what sort of information you want from this area. So if it's the height information you want, that's on the Ordnance Survey master map, and this is now in alpha, so it's out of beta. So you select this option. This then highlights the basket, and we can have 1 of 20 tiles maximum, but the tiles are rather big. Other bits and pieces that you can get from the master map, and then we got backdrop mapping if you want. This is the local sort of arrangement, so VML, Open Map, Vector Map Local. This is a raster file, so it's basically pixelated. Okay, so that's another one you might want to tick. And then we want the vector data. So there's all other bits and pieces, contours and stuff like that will be available on this, but notice that you've got 5 meter contours, so you're not really going to get huge amounts of accuracy for the purposes of this. Fine if you're doing a mountain range, but for the streets then it's not sufficient. So we go down to vector map data or vector data, and just scroll down, and this is what we want, vector map local. As we get further down to this scale, then it's basically the size of the detailing gets smaller and smaller, and the map sizes get bigger and bigger. So VML, vector map local, that's what we want. Okay, so these are the ones we've selected. That's the region we've selected. We then select this one, add to basket, and we get this dialog box. We want to make sure that we choose the correct format. So DWG is what we want for the VML, Vector Map Local, and Building Heights Alpha, we also want a DWG file. Okay, there are other formats. The KML is a Google Earth one, and CSV is a comma separated value one for introducing into something like Revit perhaps. and a geodatabase. I have no idea what that does. Okay, but something to do with geodata, I guess. Give it a name and request download, and then it's fairly swift these days. It used to be overnight, but now it happens within sort of minutes rather than hours, and get your data. Okay, so I'm now going to flick over to AutoCAD and assume I've downloaded my data. You do need to have this program open to get your data. There'll be a file which says you've requested it, and another one, an email, should I say, that says it's ready to download, and you click on the link and it opens this up, and then you download it as a zip file. So not going to go through that process, that's fairly self-explanatory. So if we now look at AutoCAD, and I've sanitized this, so I've reduced it, should I say, right down. It was a file that's much bigger. If I zoom right out, you'll see that there is a reference point there, and this is where the origin is. So the file sizes are very, very big on this. They cover quite a large amount of area. So you don't want to bring all that information into the software. So basically you want to start finding out where your area is and just delete various bits that are unnecessary. We don't need all of this information. So this is my height data. This is currently in wireframe, and if I go into shades, shading with edges, let's say, then I get this sort of look to it, which again, all these edges don't make it look very pretty, and especially if you take this directly into Revit, for example, it doesn't give you the nicest looking option. But shaded, that kind of gets rid of all those edges, and then the shades of grey, that gives you that sort of option. So all these different view forms that you get on this, the basic colour underneath it all is that. So I'm just going to go back to 2D wireframe and go back to my top view. It just speeds up the whole process. So I've called that reduced heights, not because it's lower than the other heights, but it's a reduced size map. And then I've got this is my VML, and also I've chopped out the bits that I don't want. This has the origin point slap bang in the middle. I moved that there myself. You'd have to excuse my nasaliness as well, but I'm sure the information is worth having. And then I've combined the two, so you just bring one into the other. It's probably a better option to bring this file into this file. This can again come in as a block. Be careful when you insert blocks that the origin point is not miles away, so that's probably why I moved the origin point to the center of my site, in which case is, in this case, which is this bit here in the garden. So just to do that, for example, if I go to this one and get rid of this and delete that, so just show you how I would go through that process again. And again, I'll turn it from shaded down to 2D wireframe. Insert, and then use this option, insert block. So under more options, I'll just run through that again, that was a bit quick. So insert block. If I hit the drop down here, then if the block that I want to insert, which is there, okay, if it wasn't in here, then I would get this more options bit, because I could insert these bits and pieces, but I don't want to insert these. I want to go more options, and then this is the dialog box to bring me in more files. Now it's already loaded, so but what I would have to do is browse to the file location of this site, and then scale I'm not going to specify on screen, rotation I'm not going to specify on screen. It's coming in as meters, and I say OK to that, and then I get this. Because my origin point is central on this, that's the kind of key to this. And then I'll just sort of line it up by guesswork to start off with. And it might have snapped to the height, so I'll just go in and check what's going on. It seems to have picked up some sort of midpoint, but then you're never really sure where the origin is on this thing, because this is a piece of height data. This is the distance kind of somewhere in there above sort of a datum. Now it might be sea level, it might be something else. So you've got to position this thing to the underside as best you can. Now, you possibly could move all the objects to, let's just see if I can slide this off. It keeps telling me it's copy the clipboard has failed. Is it pinned or something? I don't know. Anyway, I'll control exit. No, it doesn't want to do that for some reason. And then right click and clipboard. Paste. Oh, no options there. Okay, I'll bring that in a second. What I might be considering doing is just, if I select all these things, I don't know whether, no, there's no option for positioning these things, all poly mesh faces, so we never know which ones are which. So it's your best bet really to position this. So if I go to top view, I just swivel this around a few times to get back to top view. What I'm going to do is not position it over this, but position it out here and then move it into position. So if I click on insert and find that file, reduce site, I'll just bring it in to here. Oh, okay, great.